Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I am delighted to welcome an accomplished and respected author and a coach from Ottawa, Canada, Mr. Germain St-Denis. Germain, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Ashutosh. It's a real pleasure to be talking with you again, and I really appreciate the opportunity
Thank you.
to share the message.
Thank you. Germain is an author of a book titled Empowering People Through Caring Leadership Strategies That Actually Work. And he is a leadership consultant and coach, a mentor, and an author. So, Germain, let's start straight with the questions. Tell me a little bit about what was the inspiration to write Empowering People Through Caring Leadership?
Well, actually, I like this question. People ask me that a lot, and I expected that. Um, if I go back earlier in my career, and I've had a long, very good career, I've noticed from the very beginning how different leadership styles
Yeah.
really can impact people, both positively and negatively.
Mm.
And after I got into leadership roles and I adopted my own style, which I call servant leadership, very close to caring leadership, which is very close to servant leadership. Um, I decided to write a book mainly to try and convey this message and help to develop more leaders who will be more human centric, people focused, and therefore develop better workplaces for everyone. Simple as that.
Yeah, very interesting. You describe your own leadership philosophy as an architect of people first. Can you explain this to me and how does it shape your approach to leadership? And if possible, give me an example.
Okay, yes, that's great. Um, yeah, this is a bit kind of a mystery to a lot of people. Architect of people first. What does it mean? And it's something that I kind of coined maybe 4 or 5 years ago after a discussion with a really sharp gentleman in California.
Mhm.
And he's saying, what he gave me some examples. He said, well, you could be like the so and so, like, the hamburger of McDonald's, the Big Mac of McDonald's. Come up with something like that. And I was thinking, okay, well, what's involved in getting people motivated
Mhm.
and getting them to succeed at work? A lot of it is really kind of architecting, if I can use that word, right?
Mhm.
And the idea is of bringing people together, helping them collaborate. And people first means that basically when we make decisions or when we plan something, think about the impact on your people, right? Always have the people in mind. So to be able to be an architect of people first, and the basic philosophy is number one is you have to be a caring, good person to lead well, to lead in a very humane way. And you have to get to know your people and
Mhm.
understand what will impact them.
Yeah.
And if you're planning something that's going to impact your people really negatively,
Mhm.
and you may not be able to avoid it, you
Mhm.
better make sure that you plan how are we going to help them get around it, right? Or move on to something else. So
Mhm.
it's always the idea of think ahead, what's the implication on your people,
Yeah.
and consider them all the time, consider them in your decision making.
Great response. And how would you define caring leadership and why do you believe it is crucial in today's corporate world?
Yeah. Caring leadership is a bit different because that means now that you're in that leadership role, for at every level of leadership, which is something many people miss, right? Many organizations miss. Every level of leadership should be thinking about how do we develop and grow our people. It's one
Mhm.
thing to get the work done, but a real caring leader will also take into account your people's career aspirations, their well-being, right? We hear about a lot about um, you know, low engagement, attrition, that kind of thing. So consider their well-being, consider what they need to be successful, and everybody has different objectives, and that changes over time. during their career.
Mm,
So caring leadership is always, always, again, putting people first, but getting them to know them on an individual basis. Now,
mm,
if you have a large team, obviously,
mm,
you may not get to know 1,000 people
sure.
personally,
Mm,
but your different levels of management should, right? So at the end, there should always be a manager
mm,
or two that know every person well enough.
mm. Well said.
Mhm.
And based on all the work that you have done as a coach and as a leader, and all the research you must have done for your book, what are some of the common challenges you have observed leaders face when transitioning to a caring leadership model?
Yeah, and that is kind of tough. And I did research, and I have a lot of input actually from other leaders. That I had a great suggestion from a colleague, Mr. Patrick McKenna,
Mhm.
who's a very well known, renowned author himself, and he suggested that in my book I should solicit other people's insight on how they lived as a caring leader, what challenges they had. So there are examples in my book at the end of each chapter, pretty much. Um, the idea is that sometimes you may be perceived as being too weak if you're soft.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
depending on the culture of the organization, I've worked in organizations where the culture was more like you would say competitive, if you will, or dog eat dog kind of
Mm.
thing.
Mm.
In those cultures, you're seen as weak if you say you care about your people.
Mm.
That is a real challenge. So the way to get around it is to prove that you can be successful by making your people successful and
Mm.
highlight what they do. And that really works.
Very interesting. Jibin, you also talk about situational leadership. Tell me a little bit about this and how do leaders adapt to situational leadership?
Yeah, there are several leadership styles that people are probably aware of. There's a really great book that I read probably 25 years ago now, written by Daniel Goldman. He's the guru on emotional intelligence, and he describes various leadership styles and going from the command leadership style, which is more like military, if you will, to you know collaborative coaching style. And what happens is that sometimes all of those are valid, but you can adopt a certain style depending on your personality or depending on the people you deal with.
Mm.
And that's where situational leadership comes in.
Mm.
There may be times where you really have to be tough, right?
Mm.
And maybe you can't show that you're as caring or you can't be as caring as you'd like because
Mm.
business decisions mean sometimes you may have to lay people off.
Correct.
Somebody may not be performing. You have to arrange for them to be let go, that
Mm.
kind of thing. So it depends on the situation. But there are other times, what if all of a sudden there's a new person in your group,
Mm.
or you discover that someone has these talents that you didn't know about?
Yeah.
Then you bring them in, right? So you start including other
Mm.
people. And so situation leadership is adapt your style
Mm.
to the situation that you're dealing with. And don't be so narrowly focused on, I'm only a coach or I'm
Mm.
only a
Yeah.
command style, right?
Mm.
Adapt. That's the thing. Yeah.
Mm. Very interesting. Uh, my next question is that how can leaders balance accountability and caring leadership to ensure performance without getting into micromanagement?
Hmm. That is a superb question. I should talk. That is a really superb question.
Thank you.
So it's a bit of a myth that caring leaders are soft from
Hmm.
that point of view.
Hmm.
That servant leaders are soft from that point of view, and that people can get away with doing less. That's a
Hmm.
real myth, I can tell you. And
Okay.
you can ask anybody who I've worked with. Uh, they don't say that I'm difficult, but they will say that I'm tough in terms of meeting deadlines, meeting our goals,
Hmm.
tough but fair, if you will. So when we talk about somebody's contribution to a project or to a goal, we need to make sure that everyone understands what their contribution means
Hmm.
to the overall objective. And when they understand that, yeah, then you have kind of a commitment from them by saying, okay, I'd like you to take on this project or this
Hmm.
role on the project. And when they do, they commit, right? And when you have a good relationship with your staff and with other levels of management, it's a commitment. And then people work to honor that commitment.
Hmm.
And if everybody on the team does that, they will support each other when something goes wrong, right? And if somebody needs help, someone will step in. So
Hmm.
definitely that accountability has to be there from the beginning, but you don't need a whip or a big stick
Yeah.
to get people to say that, yes, I'm going to commit
Hmm.
and I'll do my absolute best, right?
Very interesting. Very interesting. And what role does self-awareness and feedback play in becoming an effective caring leader?
Well, I think if you're not self-aware, there's a real danger that you may be sending the wrong signals. You may be missing something. You may be not listening, not realize you don't listen to your people really, or you don't hear what they're telling you.
Hmm.
So it's really good to sit back all the time. And so you're a caring leader for others, but you have to care for yourself. First of all, make sure that you're fit to lead in the sense that you also take time to relax and come to work every day energized and motivated. And you can ask for feedback from people, definitely. I've often asked for feedback on how we should do things. How do we get there? Not that I would tell them what to do, but to see, okay, do we have a good plan? Is there something that will be workable?
Hmm.
There's also leaders who will also go farther than that and say, give me feedback on my leadership. How am I doing?
Hmm.
I must admit I haven't done enough of that. And if I went back, I should have.
Yeah.
And I think I did it indirectly, but I didn't really ask the question, right?
Hmm.
But anyway, it's really important to be self-aware. How do we lead by example as the leader? How are we as a person, as an individual?
Hmm.
How do we behave when something comes up? How do we behave in difficult situations?
Hmm.
And then really make sure that people uh, understand that you do want to help them, and that
Hmm.
everybody's on board.
Well said. Uh, my next question, I think it's being confronted by every type of leadership. Given all the challenges that are taking place at work because of remote work, hybrid work, work from home, how does caring leadership address modern workplace challenges like remote work and generational diversity?
I think it's a real bonus for anyone who's a caring leader. Will get much better collaboration from
Hmm.
people. And I know that from experience.
Hmm.
I led remotely, as many others in the tech business, starting at around 2008. I did occasionally before that, but in 2008, I led remotely almost constantly. The big problem that many people make or that they see with remote work and the new generations is they base the experience on COVID.
Hmm.
So if you base your experience of remote work based on COVID,
Hmm.
where everything was rushed, decided at the last minute, you
Hmm.
couldn't really meet people, that's not what it is at all,
Yeah.
right? A well planned and well executed remote hybrid work uh, arrangement can work tremendously well, but you still have to talk to your people face to
Hmm.
face, still have to meet them in person when you can. You have to connect. I always say, out of sight doesn't mean out of mind. So just because your people aren't sitting beside you, you know they're there, right?
Correct.
And you can still build very, very strong relationships.
Hmm.
There are many people that I've never met in person,
Hmm.
unfortunately, that I worked with, and I wish I would.
Hmm.
But I still work with them. I know that I talk to them like I talk to you right now, let's say once a week or once a month. It works. And the generational divide, it is no more difficult, really, if you help them adapt. You have to help them. And the younger generations are very tech savvy. So the technology is not the issue. It's always how you can relate with them remotely or in person.
Hmm. Because, just to continue with the generational uh, staffing of most companies, I've seen now some companies could have as many as four generations
Mhm.
working together. And the gap between these could be fairly large in terms of not just age, but also outlook to life, so to speak. How does a caring leader address generational and multicultural teams?
Yeah, and you're right. Four generations. I've also read
Mm,
uh, that a large automotive company,
yeah.
BMW, at one time had five generations
Wow.
working at the same time. So if you count, I'm from the baby boomer generation.
So am I. Mm,
There's a generation ahead of me that some of them are still
yeah.
working. And if you go down, and I work with Gen Z, so 22-year-olds right out of college or right
Yeah.
out of university.
Yeah.
Now behind that, there's another generation called Alpha.
Yeah.
And I read yesterday or the day before that from 2025, people
It's
born now will be called Beta
beta.
generation.
Absolutely.
So, but my thinking is, let's just ignore these generational divides. The age is not really the problem
Mm,
or an issue. I think the outlook on life, as you said, you really pointed exactly to the right area. I think you look at what they value.
mm,
In my generation, as a baby boomer, success was critical.
yeah.
Always pushing myself to be successful and help others being successful.
Mm,
Even at a young age, when I had young children, I would travel, I would be away from home.
mm,
A lot of the younger generations will tell you, I don't want to do that.
yeah.
And I've had people say, hey, I have a young family. I
Mm,
don't want to have to work weekends. I don't want to have to travel,
mm,
blah, blah, blah. If so, as long as the job accommodates that, yes, please help them, right? It's commendable that they look at
mm.
life that way.
Correct. Correct.
Not everybody wants to burn themselves out by the time they're 30 years
I
old,
know.
right? So
Absolutely.
I think it's just
Absolutely.
a matter of listening. Why are there the differences? And the outlook on life is quite fine, right? Not everybody has to try and achieve and become, well,
So true. So true.
depends how you value what a good
Absolutely.
life is, right?
Absolutely. You also talk about the future of work and the human connection.
Mhm.
How can leaders maintain meaningful relationships in a hybrid or a digital first environment?
Yeah, I think we're more and more we're into digital first environment, even with companies
Mm,
recently saying they want to bring their employees back in the office. You can go back to the office, but and I've had this happen to me. Sitting in my office, everybody that I deal with was in a different town. So what difference does it make, right, where I'm sitting? And the future of work, even though a lot of organizations are struggling with return to office policies.
mm,
Why? Number one, why do you want them back? Is it because you have a lot of office space that's empty, which
mm,
costs you money?
mm,
Maybe the businesses in your local community are struggling because people aren't downtown.
mm.
There has to be a clear reason. And I think if you go back to my caring leadership and people first principle, understand what people will need to do their work to be successful. The future work is no different. And the future work is today, actually.
Yeah.
If you maintain good relationships, develop good relationships with your people, get to know them, get to know
Mm,
their aspirations,
mm.
what makes them tick, um, where they work is not going to change,
Yeah.
not going to matter, but the human connection must always remain. So the
Mm,
nature of work is changing.
mm,
And we're bringing AI into the equation now, and AI will help deal with a lot of administrative stuff. I wish I had an AI agent to deal with the administrative garbage that I have to deal with every day as a leader.
mm.
But the AI will never replace the human connection. And I think that will always stay.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the key role of every leader going forward is
Correct.
how do you maintain that human connection?
Mm,
Everything else can be noise, really, right? What you use as equipment, when I was in tech, what you had as a computer to work with was a big deal.
mm,
And if you found out that another colleague in another department, they had better computers, well, why? Why don't we have the same better computers?
mm.
Today, that's never discussed anymore.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's who has a good manager or who has someone they can talk to,
Correct.
someone who listens to them. and someone who will care for them when they need support, right?
Mm, mm.
Yeah.
Well said. So I have time for two more questions for you.
Mhm.
Jamin, how do you see leadership evolving over the next few years? And what role do you think caring leadership will play in it?
Yeah, I think I kind of touched that on that already, but leadership will evolve, I think, with AI coming in,
Mm,
and this constant debate of remote versus in person, the hybrid arrangement. And again, the more caring a leader can be with their people, the more collaboration you're going to get, right?
mm,
People are more willing to help if they understand their role and that they know that you will help them grow in the process. So
mm,
being a caring leader and helping people develop their career, learn as they do the job,
mm,
that is really, really good for your team. And if it's good for your team, it's good for you and it's good for your organization. So when I talk to younger people, I did a survey about 2 years ago. The main thing that every young person wanted
mm,
was a leader who cared for them and their career.
mm,
So um, no matter how the world evolves from now on,
mm.
you care about them as an individual and their career.
Yeah.
You respect their views on life, as we
Mm,
discussed before,
mm,
then being a care leader will be a
mm.
huge advantage, and people will want to come and work with you, right?
Very interesting. Very interesting. And my last question for you, Jermaine. What advice or what lessons do you have for younger or newer leaders who may feel they lack the authority or experience to lead with care?
Yeah, that actually I love working with younger people from that point of view. I
Mm,
occasionally mentor University of Toronto students.
mm,
They're engineering students who are doing masters in engineering, and
mm,
they have the
mm,
option of taking a course in management consulting.
mm,
And I've been a certified management consultant for quite a while. I have a lot of experience, and I know the professor, and he asked some of us to mentor some of the students, and he give them a project,
mhm,
and we kind of help them go through it.
mm,
And it is quite enriching, let me tell you. The and when I get younger people asking about going into leadership roles, number one, many of them don't
mm.
want to be in leadership roles
Yeah.
because they realize a big responsibility.
Mm,
At least they don't at the beginning, right? I never really looked to be a manager until,
mm,
and I have that in my book. One time, I was blown away by being promoted as the director of a management consulting practice in a
mm,
leading company in Ottawa at the time.
mm,
I was blown away because I never expected it. It just,
mm.
to me, it came out of the blue.
Yes.
And they had been watching, of course. But so the first advice I would give them is understand what really leadership means. What does it mean to be the leader? What the responsibilities that come to you, not just to get the work done, but you have to be kind of a the maestro of an orchestra. Sometimes you have to be a psychologist, like not a psychologist, but therapist, and at least listen when people have problems. You have to be a teacher, a coach, and a lot of things, a cheerleader. So understand what being a leader really means. And if you are willing to put in the effort, it can be
Mm,
very, very rewarding.
yeah.
If you go into a role and you feel that you don't have what it takes to be a caring leader,
Mm,
if you're in the role, you would normally have the authority that comes with it, but that doesn't mean you will get the respect and cooperation from the people. The
mm,
title will never give you that.
yeah. Yeah.
And if you have to use your title, like I've heard someone say, I'm a VP now and I can do this, that is absolute disaster.
Mm,
Um, if you have to use your title, you're not a good leader,
well
period.
said. Absolutely.
Yeah,
And on
yeah.
that note, Jermaine, I just want to say thank you so much for speaking to me about your book, Empowering People Through Caring Leadership Strategies That Actually Work. I think we covered a lot of ground, starting with the definition of caring leadership to talking about some of the common challenges leaders face. We spoke about situational leadership. We also spoke about self-awareness and feedback. We spoke about generational diversity, multicultural teams, multi-generational teams. You also explained to us about the future of work and the human connection. And finally, you had some wonderful advice or lessons for young leaders. Thank you for speaking to me and good luck to you.
Thank you very much. I'm really blessed that I have so many fabulous reviews and endorsements for my book.
Mm,
It's a real blessing, and I do hope people get to read it and benefit
absolutely.
from it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.